little thing. If you add all current account surplus on the planet,
This is without China.
no, yes, without China. Even if you add all the current account surplus, etc., it really doesn't add to that. People forget that the net capital account surplus is not very important. In the age of financial globalization, capital flows across. And of course, it would be impossible to that. So Brazil managed to accumulate a lot of reserves, having a lot of current account deficits. There's no direct connection between the two things. So one of these links, like you devaluate, you need to devaluate to get current account surplus, to get reserves. Not true. China got much more reserves than its surplus. This is a completely, it's a very simple idea. If you understand the balance of payments, you see that it's not true that the capital account balances the current account, of course, because there are changes in reserves. There would not be changes in reserves if the perfectly floating system existed. But it doesn't. So it's not very relevant. Now, the relative price change, why they changed the trend? In the explanation we follow here, I hope theoretical work by Crespo and a lot of people work on that. The traditional view that China demand was very high, or there was a lot of financial speculation. Now this for 13 years is a bit difficult to swallow. There is no supply, there's no cost of production, just demand keeps growing forever, and what happened to supply? Of course this is not acceptable, especially for classical economists, and you see that a number of things affected relative prices. A classical economist knows that only changes in distribution and technology can change relative prices permanently. If demand makes technique change, okay. The route through which even the demand can affect, for instance, some mineral products, higher demand led to exploration of less productive mines. Okay, demand has a permanent effect on price. But it's not lack of iron, it is increase in the cost of production. This is very basic, but unfortunately not understood by people who talk about financialization of commodities, or this immense demand from China that sucks a different amount of whatever stuff from the world that doesn't exist. A lot of iron has been produced, and oil. So, in our view, the rising absolute dollar prices depended on the fast demand growth only in the case of metals. And even then, because there has been very little investment in mines in the 90s because the prices were too depressed, it depends a lot of the OPEC coordination of not producing in the Middle East, is not increasing the supply. There is not that the oil, the cheap stuff has been gone. It's not gone. It's hidden under the subsoil of Saudi Arabia. There's no lack of oil in the planet. And the natural resource, naturally, that increased the rents, or the absolute rents, as it used to be called, in many countries, affecting international prices, not the differential price. I talk about international prices that do not include differential rent, only absolute rent, if it exists. Now these things, together with another thing, which is more relevant for agriculture and in general in many goods, less for oil, which was this nominal exchange rate revaluation, or in the case of Argentina, was the fast increase of money wages on not one country, but in the set of commodity producing countries. The dollar cost of production in all those countries increased dramatically. In Venezuela, Russia, and Argentina, money wages went up a lot. In Brazil, the exchange rate revalued. There was this internal choice connected to the imbalance, the solving of the imbalance productive cycle. If you would have more devaluation or more or less or revaluation, but in the end, real wages had to go up everywhere because they were very low. So it didn't make much of a difference. Countries who chose to be competitive had a lot of inflation, like Russia, to be less uncompetitive, had a lot of inflation. Countries who privileged inflation. Yeah, I know. That's official. People who tried to fight inflation had a revaluation. So in the end, the dollar wages of the set of production went up a lot. We got much better. Our purchasing power, people like me, in international traded goods, increased dramatically. Now it's not too bad, and I talk here with some Europeans that must be in trouble. At least if this trend continues, maybe some of you could go work in Brazil, you'll be very welcome. And the wages at the moment are not so bad. So we can Angela Merkel may be doing us a favor, importing good scientists. Now, I just want to stress the thing I said about demand not being so crucial with this simple thing here, which is the level of so-called commodity intensity of demand index, which is like the rate of change of that is the income elasticity approximation. You see that this thing falls all the time for everybody there. It's difficult to read, but for energy, for metals, for foods, this goes all the way to 2009. It's falling everywhere. The only line there that goes up strangely is the commodity intensity of metals in the sort of strange brownish red line that includes China. The other lines include China for other things, but not for metals. And then we keep, so the income elasticity of commodities is still less demand for everything, including oil, but not for metals if you include China. This is a specific thing. That's why the demand for China is important for metals, because they're investing dramatically in the internal market. And before I mentioned it, I tried to briefly talk about the other trend, which is the decoupling. People keep discussing if China is export-led or internal market-led. I would ask you people to reflect on what would be the weight of your iPhone if China had processed all that iron and sent it back as exports for the US. Remember, iron is an intermediate producer. Chinese don't eat iron. So they produce something with this iron. If this something is cheap electronics exported to the US, this computer would weigh 5 tons. So I think this is one way of calculating the importance of internal demand in the new growth regime of China that is more easy to understand than certain elasticity calculations that I have seen. Now, if you look here, this graph is also difficult to see. This is in European, American upside down exchange rates. The thing going up is increasing revaluation. I never say over or under valuation, but I have no idea over what or over what if exchange rates are distributed variable. How can you say it's under or overvalued? It's extremely difficult. You can say revalued and devalued and talk about the consequences. I don't use the term overvalued because I do not know, and I cannot know, not following PPP or the theory, what under and overvalued is. I would like to ask people who know what is. Now, anyway, it has been a trend increase in the real exchange rate of all the developing countries. The one there is China, but the others follow more or less the same trend. So also, there's been, even China, who grew a lot in this period, has been revalued a lot, not devaluing. So this is what happened with commodities. But if you look at the decoupling of growth, there has been much faster growth in the periphery in general, not only the Asian tigers or China. There has been faster and higher rate of growth for the developing countries, and much more south-south trade. However, the strange thing is that the cycles are much more synchronized, as a colleague called the mandatory shock. And the coupling trend, we must remember that. Unfortunately, and we should be careful, especially Argentina has difficulties with attracting foreign capital. Depended on very low, we still use dollars for everything, depended on very low rates in the US, and massive gross capital flow going from the advanced countries to the periphery. Many large, note that as accused from South Center has shown, many large developing countries that are now the regional new locomotives have tendencies to have large current account deficits, not because of exchange rate, but because they're all developed, but because they grow a lot. The markets are very integrated with international value chains, and that creates a problem. So there is there decoupling for trend? My view is for trend, yes. For cycle, no. It's more synchronized, and there's no financial decoupling. And this is like if Volcker came back to the Fed and did what he did in the 80s. We wouldn't be so affected as we were, but it wouldn't be nice. So, I'm not saying that things change completely, but they change. Now, with this new trends, there is one thing. From this point of view, the currency war argument by our president. Unfortunately, the president of Brazil said these silly things, followed by silly things said by the Minister of Finance, that follow silly things said by many Brazilian economists, that, you know, the US and Europe will have a monetary tsunami, their monetary policy is too expansionary. How could we have what we had? How could we have Lula and Dilma there if this had not happened? Because the very low rates of interest in the developed countries allow developing countries. This is another thing that, oh, okay. Before we go there, just to show, that thing over there is the trend of the emerging markets growth, and the blue line is the trend of advanced economies. You see clearly that there's been a shift, the trend of the emerging markets. The cycle component, so this is a simple thing fitting one of these filters and separating the cycle, became more synchronized for the greater integration, although the trend is not so. I'm not showing that, it's a general thing all over. And what happens is that a drastic reduction of the importance of the euro area economies, not the world economy, and Japan, it's not there, and an increase in the importance of the Asians and some of the BRICS. So there will not be an acceleration, but a replacement of locomotives, so to speak, that grew more inside. Now this is one of the things, that the low interest rates in the rich countries, and the better management of balance of payments situation, plus the positive trend of terms of trade, allowed a new phenomenon, that the spread, the so-called risk premium, is not, I don't know if it's risk, just the market spread between interest rates in dollar that developing countries attract, became lower. It's impossible to see. This is again from one of Frankel's papers, a very important thing he drew attention to. Became lower than American junk bonds and other things. The blue line that you cannot see means that in the 2000s, the markets, unregulated, considered Latin American external debt better than high yield American debt, for reasons related to their irresponsibility over that, but also because of the enhanced ability to repay foreign debts of the periphery. This is the recognition that this has been so. This has never happened before, right? There was a clear hierarchy between American safe bonds, government bonds, then American not so safe, then junk, then emerging, then Latin America. And now, when we went up, they went down, and this also allowed our interest rates to go down, together with the American interest rates being low. Of course, real interest rates went down a lot in the periphery. The trade went up, revaluation of currency. We had faster growth of domestic demand, lower interest rates with this and big increase in real wage that increased consumption. Increase in government spending, social transfer. There has been expansionary fiscal policy in spite of primary surplus, because we have a sort of unbalanced budget theory in many countries, which is the following. Many of you must know Havel's balanced budget theory. If the government expenditure goes up and then he taxes the same amount, he first increases GDP and disposable income, and then the taxes cut the disposable income, but the GDP has gone up. But imagine that there is a small surplus. The same would happen not with a multiplier 1, but a multiplier 0 point something. There is a primary surplus that comes from a fast increase in tax receipts and a fast increase in government expenditure. That's not so fast. You may have expansionary policy, although you see even growing primary surplus. This is important. It shows that even in Europe, without being able to have deficits, if the local European governments wanted, they could tax the rich and spend more. And then the multiplier would be even bigger because the propensity to consume of the rich is very low. But this is another story. But it's important that all these things happen. There has been a fast anti-cyclical response to the 2008 crisis, but unfortunately a strangely pro-cyclical tendency in the 2011s going down. So moving in to finish, of course the question of overvaluation leading to deindustrialization has been mentioned here.